You see, I've now almost spent 100 hours in Cowork and researching everything I can about it. And there are 3 features that are hiding in plain sight that many people do not use. But once I set them up, Cowork stopped being a C player and started acting like a true A player. In fact, I'm going to show you the 3 little known features that most people just scroll right past. And trust me, the 3rd feature alone completely shifted my mind about the capabilities of Cowork. So first, it's very important to have a mental framework with all of these things. And so this right here is a mental framework I want you to use with Cowork. Now, I've talked to a lot of business owners, and this seems to be the best way to describe it, that really moves the needle for them. So I'm going to explain it to you. Number 1, you are the CEO. All right, you are the CEO of all these tools. And I was explaining all this to a business owner, and at the end he said, wow, I should actually get better at managing. And I said, yes, it's going to be a valuable skill because essentially you're going to be the manager of all AI tools that you're currently using. So you're the CEO, everything comes down from you, right? And then Cowork is essentially an assistant. Okay, now Cowork is a genius assistant. This genius comes from Harvard, and they're ready to be hired. However, this type of individual has no context of your company and no context of the world at all. So it's your job, obviously, to provide that context and all that valuable information so the assistant can do their work appropriately. Then we have the employee. Now, the employee are essentially your skills, right? When you're building skills, you want the stuff getting done, and that's kind of the employees. The employees are going to do the actual work, and those are your skills, right? So your repeatable workflows, your SOPs, X, Y, and Z. Scale, again, is just a bunch of instructions that you're going to give to the AI to fill out a task, and that's your employee. So for an employee to do their job effectively, usually they need some tools or software to help them do a bunch of tasks, right? And those are your connectors. So your Slack, your CRM, the Gmail, X, Y, and Z. Because that lens really helps us, because if we hire an employee to do a task, then we start thinking, okay, well, it's going to need a bunch of context, which is the skills, and then, well, it needs access to X, Y, and Z tools. And so that's why that lens is so helpful, because if you're trying to create something, then you just start going through the checklist essentially to think, okay, how can this employee, this skill really get this job done to a high degree? And then obviously we have the departments, which are just a bunch of elements put together. Essentially your employees, aka skills, are going to be in there, your connectors are going to be in there. But departments are as they sound, all right, which are essentially your plugins. So you're going to have a finance department, an operations department, you're going to have a HR department potentially, whatever the case may be, a marketing department. And then you're going to put all those elements together to create your plugin. So that's kind of the most effective way I like to look at it. And again, having that framework kind of helps you align accordingly with the Cowork ecosystem, and it really helps you get what you're looking for. So this next feature really builds off that mental framework, and that's why it's super important that that is kind of the foundation of how you look at all this. So what we're now going to do is going to talk about global instructions. Now, I've done a lot of research, I've played around with this tool. There's some great articles on X, specifically one from Nav, I believe his name is, that really outlines the importance of global instructions. Now, all you're going to do is you're going to go into settings and you're going to go into Cowork. Now, we have global instructions right here. For those who don't know what global instructions are, the instructions here apply to all Cowork sessions. So again, think of it like you just hired a Harvard genius. However, there's no context about your company policies, SOPs, things you can and can't do, expectations, X, Y, and Z. I remember when I first went into a corporate role, they gave me a bunch of expectations, right? Do this, wear this attire, this needs to be achieved, X, Y, and Z, right? And so that's what we're essentially doing, because you don't want this very smart Harvard genius playing around and having access to a bunch of tools, right? Because obviously there are some repercussions or consequences if we don't provide guardrails. And so that's essentially what we're going to do with global instructions. It's just guardrails around what our new employee can and cannot do. So as you can see here, these are kind of the company policies, okay? Just again, guardrails. So before every task, read my files before starting any work, and understand all files before any outputs. Again, if you're hiring your employee, that kind of makes sense, right? Make sure you fully understand the task before really doing anything. Planning rule: show a brief plan before taking action on any task. Wait for my approval before executing. Never jump straight into execution. So again, if you're an employee, you want to kind of consolidate with your manager or whoever that what I want to do is okay and makes sense. Right, so that's why we have a planning rule. We have a communication style. Cowork eats up a lot of tokens. So having a communication style as such, no filler language, no fluff, no corporate jargon, keep everything professional, helps mitigate a lot of the fluff that sometimes these LLMs provide you with. One, this helps you reduce the context window and saves you on tokens. Now, the most important thing I can tell you within this global instructions packet is Two things. Number one, always ask clarifying questions before executing when a task is ambiguous. And this is probably by far, the most important thing you need to have in your global instructions is never delete any files without my explicit confirmation. You need to provide those guardrails because now Cowork has access to your documents and it can do whatever it wants essentially. So take that extra step just to be safe, and you should do this with everything AI related. You should use this in Claude Code. You should use this for your skills specifically, and you should use it for global instructions when it comes to Cowork. Now, the most important feature that's really changed my work entirely is obviously the schedule function. So now, and at the time of this recording, we now have the schedule feature for Claude Code, which is very cool as well. And so this is when you can take your employees, this is when you can take your departments, and now you can actually start automating various tasks. So as you can see here, I have it making ads for me on a schedule. Oh, it's super easy to use. Just put your name in here, description, the prompt, right? Again, prompt's very important. You can put your prompt in here. And then you actually have flexibility between hourly all the way to weekly. All right, and then we have more options down here, which is kind of what model do I want to use for the specific task. I always just use 4.6 depending on your tokens. Again, you do have to be aware of your token capacity. I'm on the max plane, so I do have a lot of flexibility when it comes to that. And then obviously the folder to work in. Imagine having a department do a specific task every day or every week. Right, that's the power of it, and especially when you start using all those elements of the employees, the skills, the connectors, X, Y, and Z. So this really becomes a superpower when you use it right. So hopefully that helped you understand the ecosystem a little better, and those features hopefully save you time and increase your productivity. Subscribe, and always, my friends, stay human, and I'll see you next time.